Thank you to Supabase for partnering with No-Code MBA on this webinar. The overall goal of today's webinar is talking about going from building a prototype in AI to actually bringing that to production in a safe way. So if you watch until the end, you're going to leave understanding how AI tools dramatically accelerate development. But at the same time, production systems still require thoughtful architecture. So we're going to talk to some experts that are actually doing this out in the real world, and also talk about how Supabase fits in helping teams achieve this in a quick way, so without slowing down. So we're here with three panelists. Zemo from Brothers Agency. He's the lead product builder there. We've got Harry from Imaginary Space, who's the founder and CEO, and Victor from Performance, who is the CTO. So we're going to cover a bunch of really interesting topics along these lines of going from AI prototype all the way into a safe production. And we're also going to cover some real demos from each panelist as well. So it's not just going to be talking, you're actually going to leave with some real playbooks that you can hopefully implement yourself. So let's get started with Zemo from Brothers Agency. So I'd love to start with just kind of the beginning on the prototyping section. So you start projects often using tools like Lovable to move quickly. So I'm curious what your workflow looks like going from idea to PRD to working prototype, and just some more information about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, happy to be here. Thanks for having me, Seth. And yeah, it's really. I spent a lot of time in that early stage. Lovable is great for building like really quickly, but a lot of time needs to be spent in the idea and the PRD and the planning stage. I think I spend like 80% of my time actually planning, and the remaining time actually implementing. People often have a misconception around what my role is. Like I'm not really good at prompting. Most of my prompts are like okay or go or option A. It's actually the real skill is around providing context to the LLM and giving it the right context to do its job well. AI has collapsed the time to build significantly. It used to take months, years to build prototypes and apps. Now it can take minutes, but AI is, I think Ellen Naverno said, AI is average intelligence. It just goes to the average, especially if you're just prompting it sort of blind. What really, and you know, that's great if you're just like having fun, you're building a prototype, you're kind of vibing. It's kind of like doodling. You can doodle an app really quickly and you can like put stuff down on on Lovable really quickly. But if you really want something that's gonna like grow and build well and you need to move slowly to move fast. I think the phrase is slow is smooth and smooth is fast. It's really about what is the specific context that you have? What are your users going to get out of the thing that you're building? And what's the value that you're trying to provide? What's the user journey? If you give all of that as context to the AI and then have it plan, you can go really quickly into implementation. A couple minutes, you'll have something really, really good, but it takes a long time to think about what you actually want to build.
And when you think about like the back end and adding Supabase, for example, or whatever you're using for your back end in terms of their documentation, is that something you think about in that first step, or do you think about that later? Where is that in the process?
It's probably most of what I'm doing in the planning phase. Like I said, it's all about context engineering. It's about creating the right context so that the AI understands what you're trying to achieve. My background is a product manager. I'm not a developer, so I lean on my expertise as a product manager to understand what's the right UX, what's the user's intent, what's the user's need in this particular part of the project, and then if you prompt Supabase to build that without any, I mean, sorry, if you prompt Lovable, sorry, without the right context to build something for you, you say, I want authentication or I want a login flow, it'll create, again, the most average thing. It'll just take all of the pre-existing training data and just kind of give you something that's kind of average. But and maybe 5 times out of 10, it will hit the right thing for you, or like 80% of the way there. But really where you start to level up is you start to say, okay, Supabase has documentation that's human readable, but it's also AI readable. And if you're providing the right context before you start planning, so you tell the AI, hey, take, I want to build authentication. go into Supabase documentation and find out the right way to build authentication according to the documentation. Then you tell it, create a plan based on on your research. It will create a plan that's significantly better. The next thing I do is actually then tell it, you're a junior engineer that's been tasked to implement this plan. Review the documentation and come back with all the questions that you have. That's the best prompt I've been given as I think a colleague of mine had a colleague of his tell him at some point. But basically, you want to keep questioning the plan and keep bringing back the context from Supabase documentation to make the plan more effective. And it's all about providing the right context. And Supabase documentation is really, really powerful and really comprehensive in providing that right context.
Got it. Cool. And I think your demo, if you want to open up your demo, is kind of along those lines, and we can show people exactly what you're talking about. And maybe while you're opening it up, Harry, I'm curious, is that a similar process that you see in terms of starting projects and thinking about context?
Zemo had a load of great points, honestly. So I think one of the things that we're starting to look at now in terms of like where the industry is moving is potentially going a step further and launching 10 agents at once that cover every single part of that really nicely put together plan that Zemo was talking about. So there's definitely like that initial planning step and like that initial like requirements gathering is super crucial, because if you can give one agent or 10 or 100 really specific instructions, it's easy for them to work together and create a product. So yeah, it's funny though, because I feel like, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like it's all a bit too much. And, you know, the technology is going so fast and like there's so much new stuff coming out. It's just being adaptive and trying to grow, but keeping these good core principles in place that we know are working with models at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Zemo, are you able to share on your side now?
Sure. Yeah. I had a quick little GIF that I thought was really, really a perfect example of how vibe coding can be different to actually building a production app. I think Blinders posted this a couple months ago or last year or something like that. And it's basically like the train is moving around and it's functioning. And this is what happens with a lot of people's vibe coded apps. It functions, but it's not on the right guardrails. It's on the tracks. It's not going to perform over and over again regularly. So it's really about making sure that you're putting those guardrails in place. And Supabase is great for that. The way, like I had a small demo around like what I was talking about in terms of documentation and how you could do that. I built a really quick dog walking matchmaking app. So you have a dog and you're looking for a dog walker. And a way you can like inherently in Lovable and in Cursor, you can do the same, is you can give project knowledge. So you can give a specific context to the LLM every time you prompt. So you should be putting in rules of your context on your project. Same in Cursor. You can go into the Cursor rules and provide that consistent context. And then if you're prompting in Lovable, it has an automatic integration with MCP. So it will look at the documentation, look at all the information in Supabase. If you're in Cursor, you can go in and you can, in one click, just add it to Cursor. I mean, it's maybe 4 clicks, 5 clicks. It's pretty optimized. And it's been a game changer for making really informed decisions and not having to copy paste a bunch of things and just have it all context in place in Cursor. But basically, like what I end up doing is I'll prompt with a question like, I want to create, 2 different user types in the system. I want to create a third user type that has admin access. I want to have user profiles in the account, review Supabase documentation. So it'll go and it will find the relevant pages. And you could actually do this as a human, unless you're trying to upskill and learn a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. I would recommend reading some of these because they're really clear, really like, laid out in terms of like, you need to create a table with user roles and permissions. So it's very clear for you as a human, but for the AI, it's clear. And Lovable will basically, if you put it in plan mode and same with Cursor, it'll come up with a plan on how to implement something. It will say, what we need to do these particular steps, create these tables. And then, like I said, you can ask a junior engineer to review it. You can ask a senior engineer to review it. You can go back and forth. And like Harry said, you can, once you start creating more systems around it, or an agency that's building it on a regular basis, you can 10x those processes. But if you're just vibe coding in your dorm room and you're looking to launch the next Facebook, you need to use the systems you have now. But yeah, so you basically come up with a plan, and it will implement it based on the documentation, and then you can just go directly into the table editor in Supabase. You can see the tables in there. You can it's really, I think it's important just in the way that you're getting comfortable with Lovable. You should also get comfortable with the UI in Supabase because you can do so much in it. You can review all the policies that are being created and make sure that they're done correctly from Lovable or from Cursor or wherever you're working. And then, yeah, the next step is, looking at things like the performance advisory. Security advisory is the first level. People always want to make sure that's secure, and RLS policies are the way that you can secure it. But the next step is how do you make it more performant? And you can ask the assistant. So you might not understand what these warnings are, but if you ask the AI assistant, it will just generate the response. Sorry, my connection probably cut off. So it'll generate an example, and oftentimes I'll add an additional context in there. I'll be like, can you write it in English for someone who doesn't understand? We'll explain it, right? So yeah, I think it's just really about providing the right context at the right time, making sure that you understand what you're providing as context, and making it as clear as possible for the AI.
Cool. And there's some really good questions coming in from the audiences as well. I'm curious, in terms of the PRDs, is there a specific tool that you're using to create that, or are you just letting Lovable create that first PRD? How do you think about that?
I like the simpler the better. I think I use Lenny's Richitsky's template. It's just goal, user stories, success metrics, and feature list or something like that. The simpler you can make it, the better, because then you're not giving too much noise and context to the LLM.
Got it. That makes sense. And then in terms of providing the right context, how do you think about preventing context drift and making sure that as much as possible the AI is staying aligned to what you want?
That's a skill. Yeah, I would actually say read all of the output. I think it's really easy to vibe code something and just accept. But I found major issues with some of the plans sometimes. No matter how good the model is, it's going to hallucinate. So I would say read the outputs and understand what it's planning to do. Even if you don't understand the technical elements of it, you can understand the overall gist and what it's implementing and what it thinks it's implementing. And you can have it explain it to you in plain English as well. So I would really make sure that you're consistently checking what it's doing and then course correcting the entire time.
Got it. Victor, I know you're building at the same, it's all this, yes, softwares.
Adding to this point, one of the most important things to have into consideration when trying to keep the context concise and precise is to know how much context window does each LLM have, because if you overload it with a lot of information, the instructions are going to degrade, and that's going to be a big problem in terms of performance and so on. So one of the things that we keep in touch a lot is to see which models we are going to use for each task, and we don't use we don't use the same model for every task, but we split it on depending on the task that we have to perform.
That's really interesting. Is there a specific example you can think of a certain type of task that match up model?
Yeah, sure. For example, if we have to build a plan that it's very complex, we are not going to use a small model such as, I don't know, Gemini, Flash, or something like that. Maybe we go with Opus 4.6 or with GPT 5.4 thinking or whatever. But if we have to do a simple task, maybe a smaller model, we'll do it with a cheaper cost.
Do you have a preference right now between Opus 4.6 and GPT 5.4, or it's hard to say?
Yeah, in coding, I am biased and I prefer Opus 4.6. It's way better than GPT for the moment. But I am I am clapping for that race because I love that they fight between each of them. So we have better models and we can do greater things.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, it's crazy how quickly everything's moving and the models are improving. So let's switch gears now to Harry, and we're going to talk a little bit more about security and some other really interesting questions as well. So, Harry, you previously spoke about evolving from Lovable into tools like Cursor and Claude for production. What are some things that you keep in mind to make sure everything is secure when you're vibe coding 100% of the app?
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Like everyone else here, really excited to chat about this. And for those who don't know, hi, Ruba, I'm the CEO of Imaginary Space. You can check us out, imaginaryspace.ai. And yeah, I guess like when we last met and we did a panel as well, like chatting with you, Seth, like one of the things that we had kind of gone through is this evolution of vibe coding as a thing. It can be used for like enterprise companies, and it's about following like the right practices. And, you know, I think everybody evolves to use different tools. Like I definitely know that my girlfriend, for example, is a huge Claude Code fan, whereas I'm like a cursor purist. And so like there's this, I think as you start doing things, you find your preferences of what you like using. But I guess like working with enterprise and especially like financial institutions, we have to be really careful about the data that we're utilizing, especially if we're building a front end or a single source of truth inside Supabase, where we want to house all of the information of a company and allow their users to view it, whether it's internal or external. But we also don't want to leak anything. And I think there's some really good, like basic principles and things that have been designed in the software world from the last 10 to 20 years that we can still utilize today with vibe coding. And that's just really simple things. Like when you push code from a developer to a production app, there's a check in the middle that just happens to look for holes. And I think there's a lot of really cool tooling that's coming out as well that does that. You've got now like the Cursor Bug Bob, or Code Rabbit, I know is a very popular one as well. And these kind of tools can almost, I would say, assist with the vibe coding movement so that you don't have to just say, no, nobody's vibe coding because we're scared about all of our data being released. But instead they can be like, we'll do vibe coding, but we're going to be really also quite almost anal about how much we're going to check that code before it reaches our end user. So yeah, I guess it's trying to find that balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And what about when founders come to you and they've vibe coded their own project, but might be kind of like a Frankenstein prototype? When you're taking on, these projects, how do you think about that and maybe potentially utilize something like Supabase to help get everything like up to speed? Curious what that process is like.
Yeah, messy to say the least, because sometimes clients really bring you huge apps that look great and they've worked endlessly on it. And then you have to have a conversation around how are we going to like turn this into a real thing, But I like that as well. It seems like a lot of people are like trying to build themselves these days. So you get that opportunity to kind of collaborate in a more visual way than just a document saying, here's what we're going to build and then going away and building it. But there's a couple of ways that we like to do it. I think the main benefit of using something like Supabase is that with the SQL editor, the AI assistant, and just some of those features under the hood that really allow you to quickly set up a project, you don't really need to worry too much about infrastructure because we already have like the RLS policies for security, a secure way to log in. You have all of the providers, so you can do SSO and these extra security bits to make sure, you tick all the enterprise boxes. And I think it's like such a beautiful tool in that regard because it does have everything out of the box that you need. I'm not saying that I'm a huge fan of it as well, but in general, it does seem to do everything. And yeah, I could kick into a demo and show a few ways that we do that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'll should be able to. Are you a presenter? Thank you. Oh, perfect. Yeah. While you're getting it set up, I'm curious on like some company, like, you mentioned you work with some financial institutions who are, I'm sure, the most sensitive about security. Is there anything that you need to do to like convince them that AI is okay? Like, are they against AI or they're kind of open to it from an innovation standpoint? Harry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I have this weird bug where I share my screen and the computer
Okay.
crashes.
I think. Oh, cool. All right. I think it's if you can't if it's gonna crash, we can just do a few more questions. But
Try. Let me try one more time. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're good now. Cool.
it's working. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I was just asking because we're getting some really good questions from the audience. You mentioned you work with financial institutions, companies like that who have like very sensitive data. Like, are they open to? I mean, obviously you're working with them, so they must be somewhat open to working with AI. But do they also have a lot of skepticism around AI coding and around security, or how do you address that? Or is that really just okay? We're using Supabase, so it's secure and these things are built in, kind of thing.
Mm. I think there's a lot of like different ways to go about it. We have like a pretty robust pipeline that means that we can capture a lot of things early on. But also, yeah, I think there's been a hell of a lot of pushback in regards to using these tools. Not so much with Supabase, thankfully, because with features like branching or using sandbox data or separating your deployments, you can ensure that the data that people are saying is mock or not real. On top of that, though, I think it's, as I said, to anybody in the audience who wants to work with these kind of companies, it's still doing the traditional methodologies, the penetration testing, or even just running and asking Superbase's AI, like, are we secure? Using the security advisor, even, tools like Lovable, for example, as well, have really good tooling built in to help detect these kind of errors. So it's more about, I guess, having the muscle to remember to check and not to just vibe codes and forget about security. It is a really important topic still, especially when building applications, whether it's an internal team using it or thousands of users as well.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Boy, I'm curious about the demo.
Yeah, hell yeah. So I think there's like two ways I wanted to show everybody how we think about internal tooling and using Superbase as a single source of truth. One of the cool ways when you're thinking about all of these like architecture pieces or how you're going to set up your infrastructure, how you're going to set up your schema, is to maybe collaborate with the development team that you're working with or your operations team to kind of put together what does that ontology of data look like inside our company. So with a really simple prompt inside Claude, which I love using for SVGs at the moment, I can ask it like to give me a DB schema inside Supabase. And for this one, we're doing something a little bit more complex, multi-tenant system. So we want to be able to allow different types of people with different types of access to log in and audit it. So if you gave this to me as a developer or the company that you're working with to implement something, like this is a dream already, because you're kind of thinking about all the building blocks that are going to go together in kind of building the final app. And this is really useful from the security side of things as well, because you can just easily start asking questions to Claude and looking at this diagram and thinking about where are the opportunities where we could be a bit more protective of our data or better with it. Once you've kind of put together this like ontology of data, you can start to do really cool things with like building internal apps. So what I've got here, for example, is Claude again, but connected to Supabase using a connector. And what I've asked it to do is help me put together a presentation. And what I've kind of done here is used Claude as the way to grab all this data from all these places. So I said, can you go and check Slack and look at the client's Slack project? Can you go and look at the linear board, which is where we do all of our project management, and grab the data from there? And then can you feed all of that into our Supabase tables, add the summaries, add the bits and bobs, and then create a nice presentation? And the kind of final piece of all of this being pulling together, if you think about it as like Supabase was the source of truth, Claude is the place that I'm kind of interacting and adding data to Supabase for us personally. The final layer is just a nice front end. And this is a cool little app that we built for ourselves internally. It allows us to take our presentation templates and instead of having to waste lots of time putting new presentations together in Google Drive, we can just have code auto generate them for us. That's really useful because this is connected to my Supabase and my source of truth of all of my client data. I can easily have nice looking charts that pull from those Supabase tables, including like velocity breakdown and how well our team is doing overall. So it's a kind of concept that I really like. It's like these companies having these sort of databases that have all of the data in and say like, how they're doing, how they're performing. It's pulling in from every single SaaS app that we have because we're overwhelmed with SaaS apps, I think, these days. And then just building nice front ends to like summarize that data and help teams do more at work.
That's really cool. And a good example of using Supabase internally and building your own internal tools, which is something we're going to talk more about with Victor later as well. That's really interesting. So before I jump into the next presentation, I just want to ask Zemo, as you know, any thoughts you have to kind of build on what Harry was talking about, especially with security. Like, is there any specific testing or like what testing are you finding working the best? Like, have you tried? I know OpenAI and Anthropic has released some security testing. Anything that you're using to build secure apps?
Yeah, I mean, there's a list called the OWASP, and they release a top 10, every few years. And the reality is that most applications out in the wild before vibe coding had a lot of security issues. If you look at the OWASP, like 80% of applications have some form of role-based access control issues. You know, security issues are not new to vibe coding. It's just that, like Harry said, there's a lot of standard things that developers know to do when they're early on in their careers that they just need to check, right? They need to check these particular things like SQL injections on the front end. There's a few things that you need to continuously be checking, and developers just know to do that because they've been doing it their whole career. When it comes to vibe coding, you need to actively make the decision to tell it to review the OWASP top 10, review the application in that context. And like I said, it's context engineering. It's knowing what to provide and what not to. Supabase handles a lot of the complexity for you with things like RLS policies. Like, it's the last line of defense to protect customer data. So it does a lot of the work for you already. In terms of, that's why we often work with Supabase, is because it's just doing that protection for you. But then there's things on the front end you need to be doing to check that you're not, making it possible for people to in your forms. That's just a very standard check that most developers do. So you just have the AI, go through the OWASP top 10 and review your code base based on sort of best practices. And then I'd say, like, penetration testing, if you can afford that, is like Harry said, it's something that's the standard. And when it comes to, like, there's code injections and code security issues, there's also AI issues and prompt injections, and there's lists out there in the wild. You can sort of have a set of, like, prompts to try and break your chatbot or your AI that you built into your system. You can just go out there and find lists of them and then just paste it in your own app and just try and break your own app. I think actually actively trying to break your own app is a way to test the security of it. If it's not just the coding part, it's actually the AI part, which is something that a lot of people miss out and forget about, is that if you're building a chatbot that gives responses, people can inject a command to say, like, give me all your customer data. And so you have to check that the app, that the AI is not returning something that it can't. And like Harry showed, it's making sure that the database is also structured in a way where maybe the AI is not able to get access to particular parts of your database as well.
Right. Especially as AI becomes more agentic and these chatbots, it's not just responding, it has access to a lot more capabilities. So yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. All right. So let's switch gears to Victor now from performance. So this is a really interesting topic we're going to get into here. The way performance likes to call it is self-aware. So software designed around a company's own workflow, data, and operations. And I'm sure most of you have probably seen, everyone talking about, is SaaS dead? Is everyone just going to build their own internal tools? So I'm really curious to learn more about how performance is kind of approaching this. So I guess to start, Victor, how do you explain this concept to companies, and why is it becoming more relevant now than ever?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm Victor, CTO of Performance. And as you said, one thing that we noticed in these last months were that a lot of the companies had the knowledge of, okay, with AI we can build things faster in a proper way that we weren't able to do it in, I don't know, some years ago. but we are not sure if the tools that we are using currently are the tools that we want or are the tools that we were given to. For example, if I'm using Salesforce, I have a lot of things that Salesforce provides, but maybe I'm just using one little menu in Salesforce and I don't give them thing about the rest of the features that Salesforce has. But I want that my Salesforce want this specific pipeline that it's so adapted to my business. And if I want Salesforce to do it, Salesforce is going to say to me, okay, you are a small company or you are not big enough. You're not going to be able to have that little feature that you really love. So we noticed that and we've been hitting some doors and we have a lot of clients right now that we are building what we call it software, like software for you. And we have all the we take all the requirements that they have, like the wish list of features that they want to incorporate in their desirable app. And from that moment, we start planning, as Zemo said, it's one of the critical points of our projects is that first step where we take into consideration all the needs that the client has and how to translate it to infrastructure, to best practices, to code, and of course, in a faster way that it was done before, using AI tools such as Lovable, such as Cloud Code, Cursor, Anti-Gravity. There are a lot of great tools that are developed recently. And with that, we've been having a lot of success adapting software and making it scalable to companies. And we are not able to replace Salesforce or HubSpot or whatever at this moment, but at least we are able to provide our clients a great way to have, first of all, their data as their own commodity. It's not depending on, okay, my data, it's logged into HubSpot, Salesforce, or whatever. I'm using the same examples, but you can extrapolate to all the SaaS companies that you know. I don't have to pay more licenses. I just pay one upfront development with a little maintenance if it's needed, but I'm the owner of my own code. I'm the owner of my own solution. So if I want to add a new feature tomorrow, I just need to plan it to see how we are going to incorporate it in our stack and just go for it and have it in a question of weeks, months, depending on how complex the task is. So that's what we call self-aware and what we are investing a lot of the time and effort in these days. It's been pretty successful and also provides us a lot of satisfaction to see how the clients start to think big and to dream about, okay, maybe I'm not in a jail and maybe I'm able to do the things that I always wanted to.
On the data source part specifically, are you usually like exporting data from their existing CRM or HR platform and bringing them together in a system, or are you kind of tapping into those platforms and that's the data source? Or maybe it depends, but curious to hear.
Yeah, as you said, it depends. We try to keep all the data in Supabase in the projects that we use it. We use it in mostly all of our projects. And if it's a structured information, you have PostgreSQL, so one of my favorite type of SQLs databases. You have also a vector to store embeddings, but because we do a lot of AI solutions and we need to store those properly in order to do, well, semantic search with RAG systems and so on, you have S buckets to store your data or your documents or whatever. You have all the things that you need over there. So if we need to connect to an API or a source of truth that we don't have access to, we just try to have it implemented in our backend with edge functions or similar things if it's not possible to have it in a Dino server. But we try to focus everything inside Supabase, consume it, and show it in our front end with the logic from the backend in Supabase. But we try to simplify things and to reduce the amount of sources of data that we work with, because if not, you start to have a Frankenstein with information over here, information over there, maybe in different code languages. Well, completely mess. And we we do that job to go to the client and say, okay, you have a great mess here. Yeah, and for the moment it's working. I'm not sure how how much time do you have until it gets really complicated, but let's unify things and work in a proper manner with this information. Because if you are going to consume this information with AI, it's easier if you have it all in one place. Because if you want to do, for example, text to SQL queries with natural language, or text to SQL plus relevant information in a RAG system, it's easier to maintain, to configure it, and to query in order to retrieve information.
Right. Having one single source of truth is so important. Yeah. So yeah, I'd love for you to demo an example,
Yes, sure.
one of these self-aware projects for everyone.
Sure, I will share my screen. Just give me 1 minute. Okay.
And also everyone feel free to keep asking questions as we go, try to get to them at the end.
For example, well, as I said on the beginning, one of the main things, this is an example, okay? The main things that we try to do in the beginning, in the first step, is to do a proper planning of each schema inside our database. Because if not, this one was a big one because it has a lot of things. But if not, you are going to have a great mess with a lot of tables in one schema and so on. And you have the ability to control that in Supabase. So it's a great way to have it. And we plan a lot of effort, as Harry showed us with the, for example, here in Cursor, we do it as well. The schema visualization before building it. And we plan according to the features that we want to develop. Okay, how many tables are we going to use? Does it make sense? Do we need any foreign keys? Do we need to index any columns? So on, which are common best practices from software development. I've been involved in software development a lot of years, and I started without AI, asking a Stack Overflow. The things changed a lot, but the core principles remain. So this is the one of the key parts that we take into consideration. And for example, in this project that I'm going to show you, we build for a company that it's focused on human resources, an evaluation platform where they can set up their own assessment and so on. So it's easily configurable, and they have a lot of clients where they can check their own questionnaires that they created, edit them, create conversational questionnaires with AI, set up a lot of things and so on. And also for that same company, we try to replace Copilot, or even GPT, where you have the APIs from some models. We have these ones were asked for the client, and you can use whatever you want. And you can upload your data, you can search through the internet, you can have context from Teams, SharePoint, Outlook. I can ask him, how many emails do I have? And it has context from my email, and I can read it from there. From here, I can send emails from here, and so on. So it's a great way to to show how we are able to provide an alternative to the giants that it's adapted for you. So it's one of the success cases that we've been working on. And for example, we are able to have presentations created in an automatic way, as Harry shows, that you can export to PPT and edit later, or do whatever the things that you want to adapt. And we add more functionalities core to their business that OpenAI is not going to adapt to you at this point. So if you want to share some specific information related to your SharePoint in a proper way with an agentic logic, you're not going to be successful if you want to just use the box tools. So that's what we've been doing. Yeah, that's how we are approaching, focusing, obviously, having all the information in the table editor. We use a lot the authentication because it's super cool. We don't have to create or to reinvent the wheel, to put it as an example, because we have it integrated there. We have a file storage, we have vector storage, we have a lot of things that we are able to check and to do inside Supabase, and also with the ability to make it open source. And if you want to move it to another server, because I don't know, you can use these ones perfectly fine. But if you want to put it in another server in your local store, okay, go for it. If you want to, also one of the things that we use a lot is the integrations with GitHub that makes us easy to deploy code fast in order to have the CI/CD pipeline ready, and just with a few clicks in the PR, we are able to deploy our code in an easy and fast way. So yeah, that's mostly what we are doing.
That's really cool to see the full example and how Supabase also helps to power it all in the back end, and the different specific features that you guys use, like the integrations, is super helpful as well. What, if anything, has surprised you the most about how AI tools are changing client expectations? Like, has that changed things a lot?
Yeah, the other day we have a meeting with the CEO of a company that wanted to create their own CRM, and he said to us, I already have it. I already have it. The only thing that you have to do is make it better. If I'm able to do this, you are going to be able to make it better. Okay, let's see your CRM. Let's see, how did you build it? Okay, he built the CRM, and he had the console log in the front end. So he had all the relevant security information exposed. And it was like, it's built, but maybe you can just use it locally. It's not ready for production. So those type of things are sometimes messy to handle because the expectations are really high, and it's easy to show something fast. But when we are working in the backend, in the security, some things that are not that visual, it's hard for the clients to understand that we are doing a lot of work as fast and as successful as we were doing it in the beginning, but they are not seeing the results so visual as the beginning. And they think like, okay, but at first we were doing things so fast. Why is now taking so much time to make this backend connect to this other API or whatever? And we have to speak with the client. Okay, things are like this. We have to keep developing software as secure and scalable as first principles. You can do with Lovable and Cursor beautiful things, but you are going to reach the point where things get serious and you need basic concepts, proper knowledge. So the main thing, or the phrase that we are hearing a lot these days is that programmers are going to be replaced, or maybe not replaced. They have more tools to be more productive, and they are going to build more things. But you need the core knowledge to keep building secure things. And it's fair to say that the AI, it's a mirror to ourselves. If you input great context, you're going to probably have great results. If you input poor context, maybe it's going to tend to average, as Simo said, or below average.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Maybe to wrap up, I'd love to maybe pose a similar question to Zemo and Harry as well. We can start with Zemo. How are you seeing AI tools changing client expectations? Is that, are you seeing similar, different?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. It's almost mirror of the expectations. I think AI has collapsed, like I said, the build so much that the expectations are coming from the other direction now. Like, before it was like there was an expectation it's going to cost a lot of money, and there was like a lot of work that went into an MVP. It would take 6 months, and Lovable and these sets of tools, they can get you something like like I showed in my GIF. It can get you something that works, and you can actually like test it, use it. And that actually has collapsed a lot of the thinking space, like a lot of the time that someone like myself would have spent understanding the problem, because the person who understands the problem vibe coded a working solution to it. But then it's that okay, it works, but it's not going to work consistently. And it's not going to work. It's not going to be safe. It's not going to like scale as you use it. Even if you're using it as an internal tool, like if you have hundreds of requests coming from your users for analytics, you want that to be consistent and safe, but also accurate. You don't want it to be like just based on you want it to be a RAG database. You want it to consistently be able to put the right results out. And so it's resetting that expectation. Yes, the time has collapsed, the cost has collapsed, but not so significantly that it's going to cost you 100 credits on level. It is going to take you time and effort and money to build something that is production ready. So it's kind of realigning that expectation. And there's a lot of like voices out there that are like, you could build a whole app in one prompt, and you can do this in 2 hours. And it's like, you can, but is it gonna stay with you? And is it gonna be something that's consistent over time? That's probably not the case. So yeah, it's really about resetting our expectations to say engineers are now 10x, but they're still absolutely necessary to the process. And it takes here.
Totally. And Harry, what about you specifically around maybe the expectation setting around production ready and like everyone's saying, it is quick to build the prototype, and they might even come to it. So yeah, that might be a good way to wrap up.
Yeah, I think the thing I love about like where we're at now with it all is we have this like communication problem sometimes in tech where we're trying to express ideas. And I think using tools like Lovable, Cursor, Claude Code, people can communicate their ideas a lot quicker. And that like, bring down in time, or like not having to do it on a piece of paper or whatever, is magical. Because even if it doesn't work, it's still a great way to kind of show what you're doing. And it's giving people this kind of creative freedom to build, and maybe it doesn't work in production or whatever, right? But at least they have a little UI you can click around and might understand the ideas that they're trying to get across. I think we're in a lucky position where a lot of our clients in imaginary space always say every week, wow, you guys are moving so fast. We're amazed, because they have dealt with probably the pain of working with larger traditional software agencies that took forever, because that was, as Victor said, it was a long process. I think all of us have said it was a longer process. But nowadays, as we see the technology growing, it's becoming less and less and less. I think we really sold this idea of like when Vibe coding first came out, our core offer was, we'll build you a startup in 30 days. And we had a lot of success with that. But we found as we were building like more and more complex projects and working with larger and larger enterprises, it does take the benefit of like spending that extra couple of weeks in the scope or in the roadmap just to cover like all of the vibe codey stuff that could come up. So whether it's security holes, having the right data structure, and then as well as taking extra time towards the end to make sure you're good before everything goes live, also, as the guys have said, like taking that extra time at the beginning to put together the building blocks so that, you're not vibe coding something and just building stuff at random. It's following a plan, it's following direction, it's following like, here's the brand guidelines, here's the design system, here's the security preferences we have, etc. Right. And I think if you do all of that stuff, set up the cast rules and all of that, you can get to the end product and have something quite stable. We still build very fast in imaginary space, but we're trying to also, as you said, like set expectations. Like if you want something secure that works and we're not going to leak everybody's email online, we need to take a little bit of time as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining, and Zemo, Harry, and Victor for sharing all your expertise, and Supabase for hosting the webinar. Hopefully, if you watched the whole thing, you have a better understanding now of how to go between the gap of a prototype to production-ready system, and also have a little bit of more understanding of how Supabase can act as that back-end foundation to the production app. So thank you, everyone, for joining, and be sure to come to the next one.
Thanks for hosting, sir.
Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye bye.